Lions. Let's go. Nation, stand up! You've waited for this.
All right. Well, hey, good morning, everybody. It is Rise and Grind morning show on Rocked On Syndicate Sports. How's everybody doing this morning? We've got a few topics to get to this morning. And yes, Derek is MIA today. He must not be feeling the greatest today, but I got his message about 7:30. He wouldn't be able to make it today. So, Derek, hope you're doing well this morning. But we're going to keep going. We're going to sprint through it today and get to a few topics. And the most important topic of the day is it is February 20th. What does it mean? Well, the franchise tag window opens today. It is officially tag day in the NFL. This marks the start of, for teams to be able to decide on whether they're going to franchise tag or transition tag any of their players from the 2024 season. Obviously, it's going to create some cap maneuvering. There's going to be a lot of action going on between now and the start of free agency. But look, let's just call it for what it is. Today is just gamesmanship. This starts the period in when teams are going to try to tuck and hide their players away by placing a tag on them, so other teams can't do anything about it. Good morning to everybody in the chat. Brandon Bowen, the Wops, Rick Grit. How's everybody doing today? So let's take a look at a few teams this morning that could have some impact on the Lions. And the impact is, addressing big time players in free agency and which ones may or may not fit with the Detroit Lions and may or may not be tags or options for the Detroit Lions, and they may be tagged. Good morning, Michael. How you doing this morning? And salute to you too, sir. Appreciate you. So here's a few teams that I've kind of pulled out, and a few teams that I'd like to look at and then really discuss, quasi in depth of how they fit or how they don't fit and what options the Lions may or may not have. And we're going to start right with the NFC North in Chicago. So the Bears have more than $67 million in cap space, and clearly they can keep Jalen Johnson in-house. And I think everybody agrees that the Lions probably number one target. Maybe not everyone agrees. Actually, I know not everyone agrees. But the number one target in free agency and or the draft should be securing the back end of the defense. And you can do that in two ways, right? You can have an incredibly, potent defensive front, or you can secure the back of the house, which can help elevate the defensive front. It goes both ways. But Jalen Johnson, he's given the Chicago a little bit more time to think and how they're going to attack this. They are probably placing Jalen Johnson as their number one free agent target. And what that may look like, though, for a cornerback is an $18.8 million tag. Now, I think many would argue that Jalen Johnson is probably worth north of $20 million. So this would, in fact, save Chicago a little bit of money. It would only give them a one-year rental on Jalen Johnson. It's not going to stop Jalen Johnson, from holding out. He can still hold out and not play on the tag. He just wouldn't get paid. And then he wouldn't be able to sign with another team or play for another team the entire season if he were to do that. So if the Bears decide to tag Jalen Johnson, he's off the shelf. He's done. Or he's put on a shelf, I guess, to say it another way, and he's done. He's done for the season. But that also gives Chicago a few more weeks to work out a contract, that works between both parties. And that's what you're going to hear a lot this morning, is the tag is usually used as a chess piece to, allow teams to continue to move around the board and figure out what they need to do top to bottom, left to right, and figure out what players they need, to roll into the 2024 season with, and how they're going to get all these contracts, underneath the salary cap. And speaking of the salary cap for just a moment, so I got into a conversation with Derek last night about salary cap, and I did a little bit of research, and the question for me was, when do they have to be under the salary cap? Based on what I learned, they have to be under the salary cap by the new league year date, which is March 13th. So I think that throws a little bit of a wrench into things for a lot of teams that are already under the salary cap, and then also the teams that are way over. There's like 5 or 6 teams that are in cap purgatory, and they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle keeping their own guys. They're going to struggle bringing guys in. So some of these teams, are really going to have some difficulty. All right. Good morning to everybody in the chat. Let's see what everyone's saying today. Good morning, Claudio. Bruce Morton. Claudio says, hey, guys. Bruce says, hey, what's up, Will? Greetings from Germany. Hey, greetings from Germany. I'm glad to see we're reaching worldwide now. That's awesome. Michael Brevort says, I like 2 mid for 1 high mentality. There you go. That's kind of where I'm at, too. I appreciate that sentiment. Michael asks, does the franchise tag tie up that money to negotiate with other players too? Yes, I believe the minute you place the franchise tag, it hits the cap right away. And that's the part that I don't understand in the NFL. So if you have a team that is, way over on cap, how can they even use a tag? And I get it. They have to be under by March 13th. But how is that fair to the rest of the NFL? I think that if you are over on cap, you shouldn't be allowed to use transition or franchise tags. That's just my personal opinion. If you've done, a good job in handling all of your contracts, and you're not 80 million over like some teams are, then yeah, you should be allowed to use all the options available to you and every other team. But if you didn't do a good job in managing your cap, and you're playing the game of, I'm over during the season and I just have to get under by this one day, I think it's BS. But I also feel like those teams aren't going to succeed in the NFL either. Some might. You might have one that is, real close, and they go out and spend a ton of money that they don't have just yet, and they may win a Super Bowl that way. And I really don't think that that's fair, but I guess it is what it is. You got to play the games, kind of like taxes, right? You got to play all the little loopholes and use all the little loopholes to save all your money, but may not feel right, but it's legal. So anyway, the teams that, and the guys that I feel could impact the Lions. Here's the teams: the Bears, the Vikings, the Chiefs, the Commanders, Bengals, Jets, and Miami. So I started with the Bears. Jalen Johnson, clearly he is an immediate fix to the Lions defensive backs. And the Lions really need a number 1 corner. Now I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction here, because we're talking about the draft at the same time. I think that free agency sets up your draft. I think everyone understands that. But this draft it's starting to look a little bleak. If you don't come up and grab a top tier corner, which are going to be in the top 15 picks, then you're getting second fiddle guys. Now, I put out a video yesterday on Kamal Hayden. Phenomenal athlete. 5th round pick right now. Should move into day 3 or day 2. Round 3, maybe slip into round 4. He's somebody that would be, a great, somewhat of a project, but somebody that can also come in and be an upgrade to what you have on this Lions roster already, which is bleak, as far as who we have on, for cornerbacks right now, because we just don't have anybody. But guys like that will be available, and he may be a diamond in the rough, but he's not going to come in and be a shutdown corner day 1. Hardly any rookies will ever be a shutdown corner on day 1. There's only one every single season that actually has an incredible season, it seems like. And, you had Sauce Gardner 2 years ago, and then you have Devon Witherspoon this last season. Christian Gonzalez actually had a pretty good season too, but that's it. 1 to 2 players, and that's it. So if you're looking to immediately, take care of your offense or your defense, you need to find that one player. And that's why this draft is leading me down the path of free agency for the cornerback room, and then settle up in the draft and find some, secondary players that, can be really solid backups this season, and it could step into a better role, as they get more acclimated to the NFL. Shadow Viper says, good morning to everybody. And good morning to you guys. Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, Matthew. All right. So Jalen Johnson's probably off the board. We'll just put that there. He's probably tagged in the coming days. 18.8 million is a steal for him. So he's probably off the board. So where does that put the Lions in the hunt for cornerback? So let's move to the Chiefs. Okay. Ladarius Sneed. So they have Ladarius Sneed and Chris Jones. Those are the two biggest free agents that could get tagged here in the coming days or weeks. Chris Jones is eligible for the tag, but it is cheaper to tag Sneed. So would they take the risk of Chris Jones doing what he did last season where, he sat out, wasn't going to play unless he got the right deal? They worked something out by week 2. He played. But do you really want to take the chance on losing Sneed? And then, if I can remember, I think, is McDuffie also a free agent too? I think he is. Maybe not. Let me take a look real quick. Might be too early for him. Might be ahead of myself. No, he's not a free agent. So they still have McDuffie. All right. So if the Chiefs still have McDuffie and, they want to tag Sneed over Chris Jones, that's probably a viable option. But then again, do you really want to lose Chris Jones? Because I guess I would say that Chris Jones and McDuffie is much better than having McDuffie and Ladarius Sneed. I don't know if you guys would agree with that. Man Bear Pig. No, Derek is off this morning. He texted me this morning about 7:30 that he wasn't going to be able to make it. And good morning, Randy P. Greg Wagner. How's everybody doing today? So if the Chiefs go ahead and take, the opportunity of tagging Sneed, then it's going to be tough to get Chris Jones the right contract, I believe, because he's going to want a ton of money. And he said it last season. He wanted a ton of money. And he ended up playing for a ton of money, for 1 year. So let's just say they tag Chris Jones. Well, then Ladarius Sneed is an option for the Lions. And I would say he's definitely the second best option to Jalen Johnson. So the third team that I believe is going to have an opportunity to help the Lions would be the Bengals. And the Bengals have Awuzie as probably their top tier free agent right now. Let me get the Bengals pulled up. So the Bengals would be paying their star wide receiver Higgins $20.7 million to keep him around with the franchise tag. But it would also be wise, to give Joe Burrow one of his top targets for another year. Joe should be coming back and he'll be healthy. So you would think that they'd want to keep Higgins around to make sure that Burrow has somebody to throw to. Now he did have a pretty poor season this last season, but Burrow wasn't playing either. So I think it's a good bet that Higgins, could live up to his 2021, 2022 seasons. And that, for me, would be the reason why Cincinnati is going to tag Higgins over Awuzie. Awuzie, I think, is the third best corner option that the Lions could target. And I think he's a darn good option. And what I'm not talking about this morning is, contract value for some of these guys. But I can guarantee you this, they're not going to be cheap. Maybe you could get Awuzie between 15 million and 18 million. Let's take a look. But I think he would be a heck of an upgrade. So this is what the franchise tag and transition tag does to your options. They start to dwindle. Now, over the cap has him, somewhere between 6 and 8 million as a valuation. I would say that's really far off. Based on, what he's done over the last couple of seasons. I mean, I guess you could get him at a cheaper rate, and if you can, then I would say yes, 1,000%. You should go out and get a Woozy and add him to this roster. That doesn't mean he's the number one corner right away, but he could be. He could be. I think 6 to 8 million is a really cheap option for a Woozy. But again, are the Bengals willing to give him 18 million? I don't think so. I don't think that they're willing to give him an $18 million franchise tag just to keep him around. And for that reason, I feel like they're going to tag T. Higgins, and that's going to leave a Woozy on the table for the Lions to try to get a deal done with. Rick Grit says the Chiefs are going to prioritize Jones over Snead. Most likely, I agree to. Ryan Van Valkenburg says talent we can steal from top contenders is good for the right price. I'm a big believer in that too. And quite honestly, I'm a bigger believer in taking talent from your NFC North foes, right? Daniil Hunter, Jalen Johnson, pull those guys in if you can. No, I don't want Kirk Cousins. But pull those guys in if you can. And I guess we'll go to Minnesota next, even though I don't really have them on my list. That's probably the only player, that Minnesota is going to be able to tag, because we found out that Daniil Hunter worked into his contract a no tag clause. So Daniil Hunter cannot be franchise or transition tagged this spring. So that's great news for all the teams that, are in the Daniil Hunter lottery. But that also means he's going to command the type of contract that he wants, and he's going to get it. So are you willing to pay, through the nose $25 million a year for Daniil Hunter? Does it make sense? Or would it make more sense to move up in the draft if you needed to, if you felt you needed to grab a defensive tackle or a defensive end that can be a Daniil Hunter type, it won't ever be the same in a couple of seasons, and, step on the field day one and have some impact? Would you rather give up, some draft capital from 25 to move up in 24 to be able to do that, versus paying somebody $25 million a season, but you know what you're going to get out of Hunter? And you might be able to get, a 2 or 3 year deal done. I would prefer a much longer deal, but if you get a 2 or 3 year deal done with a couple of void years, that means by the time the Aiden Hutchinson's contract is ready to be, extended, you're going to have a giant contract sitting in front of you. How can you pay all of those players at the same time? And especially when you look at, what I call the roster roulette. But if you extend Goff this season and St. Brown and Aiden Hutchinson, let's say, he gets extended in year 4. So not this year, but next year, or after next year. So 2026, I would say a lot of your contracts are going to start to blend together at some point. Even if you put void years in and you start to kick the can down the road a little bit, you're going to end up in cap purgatory at some point. You're going to have a problem. That's why the draft and why Brad Holmes builds through the draft makes so much sense for some of these higher price options. You want to keep your own as much as possible. You really don't want to pay, other guys, or other teams' guys, big money. Those aren't the guys that you brought up through your systems. And you'd rather have the guys in your systems that have earned it to get paid. I think it's a slap in the face if you bring in a high price free agent, of the same, positional group. Like if you brought in a high price wide receiver this year, not saying we'd need one or we would do that, but let's just say you did that and you didn't extend St. Brown. How do you think St. Brown's going to play? He's going to be pissed off. I got passed over in the draft by 14 guys, whatever it was. And I played like one of the best 3. And now they brought in a high price free agent. They could have paid me that money. So you got to be careful. People have egos. They also have feelings. And believe it or not, even though it is a business, you still have to temper both of those. It would behoove Brad not to try to take care of St. Brown. I just feel like it's too much money at this point. Daniel Highborn says, I heard that David Montgomery was leaving Detroit. Who on earth said that? That's a giant rumor. He just signed a contract with us last season. So if you heard that from a certain channel, I'm just going to lose it because it's just constant BS. But no, David Montgomery is going nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Why would you trade one of the best running backs in the league a year after you got him or get rid of him? Whatever they're saying that's going to be done. Michael Brevort says, and I probably just butchered your name, over the cap free agent cornerback Bunting. Yep, I've seen him. Tennessee. Hendon from Jacksonville, or teams trying to cut salary like Davis from the Los Angeles Chargers, Jackson in Buffalo, Apple in Miami, Yadam from New Orleans, Ballantyne from Green Bay. So I mentioned Eli Apple the other day, and yeah, that was a 3-year deal, Rick Grit. I mentioned Apple. I don't think a lot of people are high on Eli Apple, but I think if you're put in the right situation, your gameplay changes a little bit, right? If you're put into a team that is led the way that this Lions team is by Dan Campbell, it really changes you, I think, in a hurry. I think that you feel the energy, right? That energy feeds you. So Eli, even though he's not the best graded cornerback, he could be a pretty inexpensive option to add to this team and see if he makes the roster. It'd have to be a sweetheart deal of, not a ton of guaranteed money. Locked on Lions. What did they say? Oh, they're the ones saying that David Montgomery is going to be gone. Yeah, no. Wow. All right. So the last team I have for cornerbacks or defensive backs that could affect the Lions in franchise tag is the Jets. Now, I'm sure you guys are going to jump all over me right now because here's what I'm proposing. The Jets, would they tag Barkley? Doubtful. He was on a pretty bad offense last year. Still had 962 yards and 6 touchdowns behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. If you were to tag Barkley, he would get a raise from about 10 million to 11.3 million, which the Giants can afford. They only have 19.5 million in cap space though, and they still have to sign their rookie contracts. So maybe the Giants part ways with Barkley, which means what are they going to do with Jordan Whitehead? And Jordan Whitehead is, free safety. But here's what I'm saying. If Whitehead becomes an option, then I'm thinking that CJ Gardner-Johnson doesn't come back. Or if he doesn't come back, at a reasonable rate, then I think you're looking at, Whitehead to join this roster. Let me try to find some information here that I had pulled up on him. Give me just a second. So it sounds like the Steelers are in the hunt for Jordan Whitehead. They really, want to try to lock him down as much as possible. So teams are looking to add him. And I do believe that he would be a phenomenal option to take place of CJ Gardner-Johnson. Is he a bargain free agent though? That's going to be the biggest question. So I think the Packers are probably going to consider bringing him in too. And that's what we don't want to let happen. Like if there's good quality, options out there, you don't want to let, your North Division, bring these guys in. It's inevitable that it's going to happen. But he spent the last 2 seasons playing in Robert Saleh's defense with the New York Jets. I mean, their DBs are pretty darn good. I would say that Whitehead is a great fit in a defense that predominantly, deploys single high looks, which the Lions started to do a lot of this last season. He has solid ball skills, and even as the deep third center fielder over the past few seasons, in addition to his true strength as a box defender roaming near the line of scrimmage, he's going to play very well in our scheme. And this 4-3 hybrid that Aaron Glenn runs, we see often the 4-2-5, the 3-2-6. We saw a lot of deployment with 6 DBs, 5 DBs that we started to use primarily after what was the Saints game or around the Saints, because we started to get guys back. I think that because Chauncey Gardner was not available to play almost the entire season, you saw a change in what Aaron Glenn wanted to run for defense. But when Iffy came in and finally had, that breakout game that he did, I think he felt like, okay, we can do this without Chauncey. And now we're going to start using it more often. But you need guys that fit your scheme, right? You just can't pull and pluck anybody. They have to be a fit. And Jordan Whitehead is a fit. Now you're going to say, well, we have Brian Branch, we have Iffy, we don't need anybody else. That's just not the case. I mean, then you wouldn't need CJ Gardner Johnson. So you need at least 4 safeties on a roster. Maybe not all of them suit up for every game, but you need at least 3 that are high quality, especially in some of these other schematic looks where you're utilizing 3 safeties and 3 corners, or 2 safeties and 3 corners, or 3 safeties and 2 corners. So I think the Jordan Whitehead would be a phenomenal option. He's also somebody that I don't think is going to break the bank. If we were to look at his value right now, 1 second, I'll pull it up. He signed a 2-year, $14.5 million contract with the Jets in 2022 with a just under $6 million signing bonus, $7 million guaranteed. If the Lions were to bring him in for a similar contract, I wouldn't be mad at all. That's Chauncey Gardner money. He's younger. Not by a ton, but let's see, where's his information at? Obviously, he was drafted by the Bucs, moved on to the Jets. Statistically speaking, he had 4 interceptions in 2023, 9 passes defensed, 1 QB hit, 3 tackles for loss, half a sack, almost 95% of defensive snaps played in 2023, played all 17 games. So his best trait is that he's available, right? He's available, and that's what Dan Campbell loves, people that are available to play. Look, I like the option. I think that he should be high on the Lions list this offseason. Black Mamba 313, good morning, how you doing? Greg Wagner, do you see a possible high draft pick on the O-line? I do. In place of Jonas, I see a possibility of that. Maybe package a couple other picks and move up from 29. So I guess when I say high draft pick, look, I think that there's going to be plenty of guards available in the 2nd and 3rd round. Plenty. And what I'm looking for is a center guard. I want center centric that plays guard. And there's, plenty available in this draft where the Lions are picking. Now, I don't have my draft information pulled up in front of me. But I'll give you an option here. I do like Pooney, who's a tackle. And he also plays, I believe, left guard. And I might have this backwards. He might play right tackle and right guard. So if you bring Pooney in, it's somebody to play, guard, not necessarily tackle. But if Taylor Decker goes down, you shift Panay over, you put Pooney in at right. Who's the other guy? Cooper Beebe, I think, was another option that played both guard positions. And Bo Lemer out of Arkansas, Frank Ragnow's alma mater. Bo Lemer plays guard and center. He's obviously a center. And there's one other guy from WCF or WFC, Wake Forest. One second. Name's escaping me right now. So there's the Jackson Powers Johnson. He's going to be the only first rounder, I believe, that's going to get taken as far as centers. But Zach Frazier, I do like Zach Frazier. He's got all of the intangibles and attributes that I think you're going to want in a guy that can play center as well as being able to play guard. Now he's only 6'2", but he's 314 pounds. I think that he's going to be a great option. I would, of course, love, for him to be a little bit taller, but at the same time, does your center really have to be tall? Probably not. I just need him to have long enough arms. Now, I don't have his arm length yet because we haven't gone through the combine, and that information's pretty tough. But all of my ideas for guys that are fits and guys that I like, all of that changes after the combine because I'm telling you, the arm length matters. And the analysts out there that talk about that, about the arm length being critical or important, there's a reason for it. There's a reason why a Bruce Irvin has very good success during his career, only being 6'3". That's because he had arms of like a 7-foot guy. His arms were stupid long. That gets you at the point of attack. You're able to stay away, from the offensive tackle or vice versa. The defensive end. That's why offensive tackles and guards need to have longer arms, especially the tackles. So arm length, pay attention to it. Anything above 33 inches is the league minimum, I think, for some of the best guys to do it ever. I prefer to see them, 33 and a quarter, 33 and a half or better. And just pay attention to that during the combine. I'm going to point it out anyway. Michael, yeah, my evaluation on Pooney and Beebe, I like those guys. I mean, I really do. And I think that you're going to be able to pick them up in the second round for sure. But that's going to bring me to, a couple of other questions is, like how badly do you want a first round pick in this draft? Like, does it really matter if you pick at 29 or 33? Does it really matter? The biggest difference is you're losing a year on guaranteed contract with these guys, or the 5th year option, I should say. It's not guaranteed. And I'll come back to that in just a moment because I want to get through a couple more teams and get off the tag question here this morning. So Washington is probably my second or third option, for the Lions to be able to find a good corner, which is Kendall Fuller. Kendall Fuller is a free agent, and when I take a look at Washington here, they're rebuilding. They've got a new owner, new coach, new coaches. They're going to have new schemes, offense, defense. $73.6 million in available, salary cap space. So their own free agent crop isn't very good. So maybe no players are worth placing a tag on, right? So that means that either they're going to re-sign Kendall Fuller or he's going to hit the street and test free agency. So I don't believe that Washington is going to want to pay Kendall Fuller $18 million this season and to sit on the tag. If this owner is intelligent, I think that he's going to understand that too. I'm not going to, hand out a giant contract, really in what is my first real season of owning a franchise. We need to build it the right way, which is obviously the trenches. I would assume that's how they're going to build. And I don't think Kendall Fuller is going to end up a Washington Commander in 2024. So be on the lookout for him. Oh my goodness. Rick Grit says he's torturing himself with the NFC Championship while listening to the podcast. Man, that's rough. It's a great game though, man. It was a great game. It really was. It should have been better in the second half, but Michael Jordan says move out of the first and get more in later rounds and get the line. Can't really read the rest of that. Something about the DBs being built up. Rick Grit says number 34 was Brad's best draft pick last season. First round is overrated. First round is overrated, I believe, after pick 12. I think that once you get past pick 12, you're kind of into that iffy situation. Like, do they really deserve a first round grade? Is it worth having that extra, year at my disposal, using the 5th year option? Or should we just pick these guys up in the second round if they slip? And you heard Brad last season, how he said, and I think the number was 14. He had like 14 first round grades. And Jack Campbell and Jahmyr Gibbs were one of those, 2 of those 14. I see the same thing happening this year. I do not see, more than 15 first round grades here. I really don't. And if Brad Holmes is going to do Brad Holmes things, he's probably going to want to get in and get out just like he did last year. Which leads me to believe two things. I mean, I guess it's always two things. You either move up or you move back. If Brad Holmes has a high enough grade on somebody in the first round, I could see more of an option to move up and grab, this bona fide game changer that may be there. So if you want a corner, you're going to have to move up into the top 15. Probably doesn't make sense to grab a corner. So if you're looking at a defensive end, maybe a defensive tackle, you're going to have to move up. If you want Murphy, if Murphy is your guy, which he is my guy right now, I love Murphy, but I also like Trevonde Sweat. You're going to be able to get Sweat in the second round or later. You're not going to be able to get Murphy past the first round unless he completely bombs at the combine and his interviews are terrible. There's no way that Murphy is going to slip out of the first round. I just don't see it happening. If you want a receiver, I will say this. There are a few that are going to go in the first round that are pretty darn good. But if you watch the video on Brendan Rice, there are guys that are clean, pure route runners available in the second and third round. And what I know about Jared Goff from listening, to him for 3 seasons now, is he loves clean, pure route runners, guys that know where they need to be and they're going to get there. This offense is all timing. All offenses are, but this one in particular uses a lot of timing routes. So that's why Jameson Williams took a little bit to get going, because he had to get his route tree down and know where he needed to be and get there. He just couldn't free ball it and just kind of run wherever he wanted, post patterns and streaks, which he did a lot in Alabama. He had to learn all the underneath stuff and get really good at blocking downfield. So when you look at some of these guys that are available, and we do need a wide receiver, and we'll get to that next with Josh Reynolds, but there are options later that are going to be just as good, if not better, for this team because they're better route runners. They may not have all the physical gifts, right? They may not be 6'3", 220. They may not run a 4.25 or a 4.3, but I would give up some of that to have someone that can come in and slam the route tree and just runs pure clean routes. That takes the cake for me. That's who I would want on my team, because you can't really teach all of that stuff as quickly as you can other stuff. And you definitely can't teach speed. We know that. Speed is what it is. Can the Lions franchise tag CJGJ or Jonah Jackson? So Jonah, yes. CJGJ, I don't think so. It's a good question. I'll have to find out on CJ Gardner, but I don't think that there's an option to tag him. Hold on a second here. Let me see what kind of free agent he is. No, he's unrestricted. So the answer would be no. Now, your restricted free agents or your exclusive rights free agents, yes. He's unrestricted. So Jonah Jackson, I think Jonah's going to walk. I think that he's going to want too big of a, and Jonah's an unrestricted free agent too. So they could use the non-exclusive franchise tag, I guess, would be the option, the non-exclusive franchise tag for Jonah and CJ Gardner, but I don't know why they would do that. I mean, so what you're looking for from, cap dollars for a guard, I just had it in front of me, would be, where did it go? So offensive guards are going to be commanding about 19 million on the free agent market. I'm sorry, the franchise tag market. So, I mean, are you going to pay Jonah Jackson $19 million? Are you going to pay CJ Gardner $16.2 million with a tag? I don't think so. So let me get into that next topic real quick. So the Lions, I mean, let's just be honest here. The Lions have 20 unrestricted free agents, but they're not expected to use the franchise tag at all. And I wouldn't see how they could or would. I guess to answer your question, which kind of threw me off there for a moment, yes, they could use it. The non-exclusive would probably be the most widely used one. But in this case, you don't really have anybody on this Lions team that is worth it, that is really worth that kind of money. And I think that Jonah Jackson, to talk about him for just a moment, he's going to command too much money in free agency. I don't see where the Lions are going to be comfortable paying him, a little bit of a ransom to stay as a Lion. I could be wrong, but unless Jonah is willing to, take a shorter, contract, lower dollars, I don't see him sticking around. I mean, for the simple fact that Graham Glasgow had a much better season than Jonah. And Jonah is not a top 10 guard in this league. He might be a great guard on our offensive line, but he is not a top 10 guard on, in this league. On all of the different lists that I've seen so far for free agency, he has not been in one top 10. And so for that reason, I see, $12 million being too much for Jonah. I'd rather have Graham Glasgow back. I think he made $3 million last year. Even if you paid him $6 million, I think that's a better deal than keeping Jonah Jackson. All right, so the Lions and Josh Reynolds. That's my next topic here. Look, we're set to lose Josh Reynolds. I don't think that there's any mystery here that the Lions are going to end up losing Josh Reynolds. We'll see what happens. Now, he played the last 2 seasons pretty inexpensively. Now, Bleacher Report's Alex Ballantyne, he projected that Reynolds would be a good fit for the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. I mean, it is what it is. I don't see him really getting a ton of, passes thrown his way in Baltimore, but we'll see what happens. Buffalo, maybe. I think we have to evaluate a couple of things. One, the drops and his catch rate over the last 2 seasons, and ask the question, is he still worth keeping around? And I think a lot of people got really upset at Josh Reynolds' production in the NFC Championship game. But here's what I want to tell you guys. He is one of Jared Goff's best friends. Obviously, one of his best, favorite targets for many years now. They know each other like the back of their hand. Reynolds had 40 balls, 608 yards, 3 drops on 64 targets in 2023. It's pretty good. Only a 4.7% drop rate. Now, he had 1 crucial drop in the NFC Championship game. Maybe 2, but definitely 1. But he had 1 of 4 targets dropped, which, could have helped us win that game. And I think that's where everyone got upset, that Josh Reynolds pissed the bed. We lost the game because of Josh Reynolds. No, there's a lot of stuff that went on in that game that shouldn't have happened. After the game, Goff really dismissed any criticism thrown at Josh Reynolds. And he noted that the collapse was a team effort. And he had this to say. He said, Josh is a stud, man. Josh is a stud. He made a mistake, but we made plenty of mistakes out there. I missed throws. I took sacks. He made a mistake, and it happens. He's an absolute stud. Goff trusts Josh Reynolds, just as much as he does anybody else. He was one of our best wide receivers this season at explosive plays. I think he had the longest average per catch. But does it make sense, to keep him around? And how much are we talking? Look, he only made $6 million in the last 2 seasons. And he's given us pretty good production. And, some pretty critical plays at times, pretty critical first downs at times too. So I like that ability about him where he's able to get himself into position, and go and catch a 17-yard, pass like it's nothing. He does it all the time. How badly do you want to keep him around? Look, if you could keep him around for, $5 million a year, yeah, it's a lot more than what he made the last couple of seasons. But who are you going to put in that spot right now today that Jared Goff is going to be able to trust, that knows this offense? If you're really thinking about getting back and trying to make a Super Bowl run, you have to keep a few things the same. You're going to have Laporta. Hopefully he doesn't have a sophomore slump. Jahmyr Gibbs, you're hoping that he's going to play better. Montgomery, he should have a better second season in this offense. Then you have St. Brown, Mr. Consistent, right? He should do his thing. But if any one of these guys does not have a similar season to last season, Laporta shouldn't, but who knows? I mean, that guy's an animal. He may have a better season. You need someone that Jared Goff trusts completely, and that would be Josh Reynolds. So I'm hoping that he comes back, but this is still not, I'm still not settling for the future. This is where I think you grab a receiver, middle rounds, like a Brendan Rice. And there's others too that we'll talk about. But since I just did a video on him, Brendan Rice is a great fit. He's got that DNA, the pedigree, clean route runner. The guy's a 50-50 animal. I mean, he likes to hit first. He doesn't like to take a hit. He likes to put the hit down. So I like guys like that. I like guys that, obviously his dad, Jerry Rice, one of the best to ever do it. So he's been taught the right way from a very young age on how to do things. And I think that he's a great fit, in a little bit later round, second, third. I think that his draft stock is going to climb, with the combine. And I think that the Lions should take a hard look at him. We do not have, an X receiver right now. Jameson Williams is supposed to be that guy. He's going to have to take a significant jump in year 3 to really win the hearts and minds of everybody that he's going to be able to step into a main role at some point. Now, the Lions are probably banking on that in year 3 after watching him climb, out of it in 2023. He really kind of climbed out of his funk and started to really turn it on there in the last few games. Will he hit the ground running in 2024? That's the question. And I hope the answer is yes. But if it's not, you need to have somebody in the funnel ready to back him up. All right. Questions this morning. Robert Welch says, I'll try to ask again. My apologies. I haven't got an answer yet, but how many free agents do you think we end up with in total before the season starts? So, Robert, what's the question there? Like, how many free agents do you think we're going to go out and sign? Or how many free agents are you thinking that we're going to lose? Like, what's the question there? If you're saying how many are we going to sign, I think. All right, let me break it down just a second. Top tier free agents. All right, go sign. Yep. Okay. So if we're looking at, and Raymond's already under contract. Raymond signed a 2-year extension last year. If we're looking at top tier free agents, I think that the Lions would probably sign 1. And by top tier, I mean north of 15 million. I think the Lions would sign 1. Mid tier, I think they could sign 3. And mid tier is going to be anywhere between probably north of 7 million. They'll probably sign 3 is my guess. Now, once I see the combine and I can start to whittle down the draft a little bit more, that'll tell me what the Lions are probably looking to go out and grab. And we have to wait and see what happens with the franchise tags. So if a bunch of guys get locked up, that's going to change things. That's the fun thing about doing this, about, being an analyst or a podcaster or a journalist, whatever you do. You could write about something today and circumstances change tomorrow, and you can write about it again the next day. Totally different idea. That's kind of what happens with the NFL in the spring. That is why there is so much stuff coming at you. That's why there's, all of these mock drafts and you've got all the videos coming out to highlight players and getting opinions from people on, who fits where and how good they are and what they see on tape versus others. Not everybody is a good scout. Not everybody is a good analyst. But a lot of people have really good opinions. And, then you got some guys that are just, homers that their college team, they'll put their entire college team on their pro team. Like that just doesn't work. You can't have every guy from your college team on your pro team. And just because they're in the same state, like it rarely happens. Rarely happens. I mean, the Lions got one Michigan guy outside of DPJ, the last 3 seasons because he made sense. He made a lot of sense. So you really have to look at the defining line between who's telling you what. If you get somebody that's just selling you the pipe dream on, Michigan guy after Michigan guy after Michigan guy to join the Lions, it's not really great information. You have to look at the broad spectrum approach and who fits well. Johnny Wilson. Yeah, my opinion on Johnny Wilson is, I tell you what, very intriguing prospect. 6'7". I think soaking wet, the guy's like 205. So he's kind of skinny. But for a guy that's 6'7", playing football, not basketball, he actually moves pretty darn well. When I first watched this tape, I was expecting to see a statue out there. The oil man, whatever his name was from Wizard of Oz, tin can man, what? Tin man. That's what I was expecting to see. I think that if he could bulk up and play tight end, then he's got a great opportunity in the NFL. I don't see a lot of people wanting to sign a 6'7" wide receiver. But a 6'7" tight end, yes, he's just way too small right now to play tight end. He would have to literally add about 30 pounds to his frame. And maybe he can do it, but I don't know if he's going to have the same effect. As far as a receiver, though, he's a big time red zone guy, right? I mean, he's super tall, big wingspan. He's somebody that you can go stand in the corner and he can come down with the ball. I don't think he's anywhere near the Lions board. I could be wrong, but I don't think he's anywhere near the Lions board right now. I really don't. But he's a very intriguing prospect. Yes, and Robert Welch, I do keep the receipts. I don't always like to be flashy with it. But I think every year, I think it's kind of fun to go back and look at what you did the previous year. And last year, I mean, if you go back and watch the draft party show, which some of it got taken down because I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and sound was playing in the background, so I got copyright hit by the NFL for everything that I was playing in the background, and I didn't know that. So the majority of that entire draft on day one got taken down, but I still have the video. And I should go back and look at it and chop it up. But yeah, I called just about every pick before they were happening. I got many right for other teams too. While, before they were happening, we look at the board, who was coming up, and I would give my projections on who I thought was going to fit there. And I got a lot of them right. But as far as the Lions, I got the first 5 picks pretty much nailed spot on. Before the draft, during the draft, I did a lot of work. I put a lot of work in. And that's when I was having fun with it, right? I was just having fun. Now it's more of, I got to do it, right? It's more of a job now, it seems like. So it's a little bit different. You overemphasize things. It seems like when you're having fun with something, it's a little bit easier to do. And now I have to get it done because I have people that are waiting to see things. They want to see the next video or they want to see what's coming out next. And I love it. I didn't think I was ever going to be in that position, but I love it. And I love being able to produce good quality things. I won't always be right. So we just know that. I won't always be right. Yeah, so Derek is he's off this morning. He texted me about 7:30, said he wouldn't be able to make it today. Shadow Viper 619. What do you think about the Xavier Worthy from Texas? And then I think your message got cut off there. If you want to send that back in, Shadow Viper, let me know what your question is. Yeah, I know, Robert. Robert says, let's not be modest, Will. You hit a nice home run last year with your picks. I did have a pretty darn good year. Um, yeah, I mean, Derek should be on Thursday. Well, a lot of the topics this morning were from Derek. So I'm trying to do the best job I can this morning with some of these topics because he really had some good answers on a lot of this stuff. So mock draft. Here are my top guys. This is a little bit of a sideline this morning, but here are my top guys for the Lions. Like if this is my first mock draft that I did based on who fell to me. I didn't force any trades, but Byron Murphy at 29. I know it's not going to happen. There's no way this guy's going to slip, and if he does, he's a slam dunk at 29. Now at pick two, pick 61 in round two. Again, this is not going to happen. But if Trevonde Sweat slipped, you double up. You grab both of these Texas guys. Byron Murphy and Trevonde Sweat, along with Broderick Martin and Aleem McNeil, that is a scary defensive line. And you just need one guy to really play well that you bring in, which would be Byron Murphy. Trevonde Sweat can take his time. Broderick Martin, you're hoping that he's going to have a huge jump this season. Like he needs a huge jump. I hope he's doing everything from Pilates to yoga to you name it. Ballet, I don't care. He better get it all done this season and start working on his hands too to come back in 2024. Hopefully 20 pounds lighter and a lot, stronger and not get pushed around like he was. He's too big to get pushed around. He's too light on his feet. You've got to be a heavy anchor and push with your legs. So for some reason, that was a big knock on him prior to the draft last year, and it's still a knock on him that he gets pushed around. So I think that the Lions really need to address the defensive line in the draft so that, one, their funnel is filled and they've got guys, falling out of the hopper, that can play, and you're keeping your cap considerations low if they can't go out and get, somebody in free agency. And then round 3, pick 73, tackle Dominic Pooney. And then you double that up. Pick 92, round 3, Cooper Beebe, guard. This is a dream situation for me, and I know they're not the most sexy picks in the world when you start grabbing offensive linemen. But again, where do you win football games, guys and ladies? Where do you win football games? In the trenches. That's where it all starts. If your offensive line can keep your quarterback healthy and allow, your running backs to get through a hole, you're going to have a great day. Conversely, on the other side of the ball, if your defensive line can get to the quarterback in, under 2.6 seconds, your DBs are going to have a pretty good day. So you'd back up these picks with, Byron Murphy, Trevonde Sweat, Dominic Pooney, Cooper Beebe, and then, yes, Theo Johnson, round 5. He's not going to be there. Again, I didn't force any trades or anything. We need another tight end. Brock Wright got hurt. He's getting older. Mitchell hasn't shown us anything. He got injured last season. Who else got hurt last year? We lost everybody. We only had Ferksker and Sam Laporta in the NFC Championship game. I think it was Ferksker. So, yes, we need another tight end. I know it's not a sexy pick, but I'm not saying you go out and get one in the first round. Theo Johnson, if you can grab him in the 3rd round, I think you should grab him. He is somebody to me that mimics exactly what Sam Laporta can do. And you put him into this system with a Sam Laporta, it's only going to elevate his game. And then you have another young guy that's going to grow up, in this system. And he does need to work on his run support and downfield blocking, but he's going to be great. And then you back that up with a center, Dylan McMahon, North Carolina State. And then we need a kicker. I got Will Reichard from Alabama. So to me, that's a dream scenario. Now you're probably going to say, but Will, you didn't grab a cornerback. Nope, I didn't. And that's because I took best player available at that time. So if Brad Holmes can add some picks, I think that this is going to be the draft that he tries to do that. I really think that it would be smart and wise to maybe you give up a little bit of 2025. Maybe if someone will take some 2026 draft capital and move back up into the 2nd or 3rd round of this draft where you're going to have a lot of offensive linemen available. 2nd round, you're going to have some corners available. and you're going to have some defensive ends and tackles available in the second round. But after that, it gets really slim. Wide receivers, you're going to have a couple available between the second and third round. I really think that we need to try to get as many picks as we can in the top 110. And then after that, you just need a kicker. If Theo Johnson slips to round 4, I mean, I think that he's a great option. I really do. But I think that that's what Brad Holmes is going to be looking for, is solidifying this offensive line. I mean, we have 3 giant holes right now on the offensive line. And I say 3 because Ragnow is about done. If he lasts one more season, this season, I think that's it. I really do. And we need someone that can step in. And I think it would be extremely smart move by Brad Holmes to bring in a center that can learn under Ragnow right now. And he can play guard next to Ragnow and pick up on all those little nuances and all of the things that Ragnow does. And then when Ragnow retires, I think the Lions would be extremely smart to bring Ragnow in as a coach. Maybe he will, maybe he won't, but I think that Ragnow could be an incredible coach. He kind of gives off that, that personal feeling, that you get when you hear him talk, that he can get down to your level. And, and he's really a good motivator. He's somebody that takes everything very serious. And I like what he's done for the Lions and how he feels about his contract and what he owes the fans. So I love to see him get back. Is there a need on the team that you think is neglected? Man, I hope not, because I think the defensive end is always that position that seems to get neglected. Michael, question: did you sign up for PFF $9.99 a month, and is it worth it? So I pay the annual, and I'm not extremely excited about it. I've had it for a year now. There's some good stats. I mean, there's a lot of things that you'll see in there that you won't see in other places. But I mean, I guess it's up to you and what you want to see out of the stats. Here's the thing that I like about PFF is I think that they do a good job at giving you a bunch of information. My question is, how accurate is it? Because a lot of stuff in there is not very accurate. The next gen stats, you got to remember, those are just chips in footballs, chips and shoulder pads. They really can't tell you everything. So like double teams, tell me, how can a chip detect a double team? It can detect 2 people are next to each other, but it can't detect that you're double teamed. If you're chipped and if you're, you take on a tackle, let's say your defensive end takes on a tackle and then the running back or the tight end comes over and chips, they're going to count that as a double team when it's not a double team. So those are the kinds of stats that you have to look at, kind of like take it with a grain of salt theory, that they're not very accurate. They're going to paint a good picture, but you just got to watch the tape. Michael Jordan says, I love the big and uglies getting all of our picks. There you go. Yeah, Robert Welch, there you go. PFF is a good standard, but you have to have it weighted with tape and reporting. That's a great analogy there. So, last topics this morning. Talked about Josh Reynolds. I think at the end of the day, you got to try to bring him back if you can. It has to be friendly, but you got to try to bring him back because he's kind of a security blanket, believe it or not. We've spoken about franchise tags this morning and what teams make the most sense. So be on the lookout for the Bears, the Vikings, the Chiefs, Washington, Bengals, the Jets, and Miami. I did not talk about Christian Wilkins. So let me talk about him real quick. Christian Wilkins was my favorite next to Matabuki to add to this Detroit Lions team. Again, you're looking at Aleem McNeil, who's going to need an extension soon. Is he really going to be worth the kind of money that he's going to get? I don't know. I can't answer that question right now. He's a solid defensive tackle. He was ranked pretty high in the beginning of last season, and then it kind of tapered off a little bit. I think he gives us good production, but let's just be honest here. He's not a 6'4", 300-pound Ndamukong Suh, or however big Ndamukong Suh was. He's not somebody that's going to get to the quarterback consistently. He's not somebody that's going to take on 2 blocks and still stuff the run. Those are the guys that I'm going to pay max contracts to if it were me, right? If I were the GM, but I'm not. I'm just sitting here in my trusty chair, right? So when I look at, other guys around the league that can do that, those are the guys that maybe you want to bring in to pay. Unfortunately, Lee McNeil might have to walk when his contract is ready and have him test free agency. Justin Matabuki, he's set to cash in this spring in free agency, whether that's from the Ravens or somebody else. The Ravens are probably going to put the franchise tag on him and pay him $21 million. I think that that's a steal for what he was able to do this last season. Still a lot of money. But again, what are they doing it for? They're trying to add some extra time to work out a deal. And then you have Miami with Christian Wilkins. And go watch the tape, man. This guy, and I'm going to do one with some highlights, but this guy, he flew under the radar. I didn't really pick up on him until probably midway through the season. And he's just one of those guys that has that innate ability to make things happen. The Dolphins are $52 million over the cap. So they have to clear a bunch of space to be able to keep Wilkins. And I think that Wilkins is by far their highest target in free agency on their own team. But he would get a raise from $10.7 million to $21 million. Will it be worth it for the Dolphins, who are way over the cap right now? He had a career high 9 sacks, 23 quarterback hits, 58 pressures, and a pressure rate of 11% of the time. That's damn good stats. So he's set to cash in. Can the Lions steal him away before the Dolphins, decide to use the tag? Free agency doesn't start for a few more weeks, so we just won't know. We won't know until March 13th. But I would say that he is a very high potential of leaving Miami and testing free agency because Miami may not be able to get down. They may not be able to clear all this cap. So we'll see what happens with Christian Wilkins, but I would urge you to go watch some tape on him and Matabuki. I don't believe Matabuki is going to leave the Ravens, but I do believe that Wilkins does have an opportunity to test free agency. The question is, how much do you pay him? I would pay him $21 million all day. All day. If you could get him for 17, great, do it. But if you have to pay him 21, you put him alongside Aiden Hutchinson, watch out. That's going to be the number 1 defensive line in the league. If you have Aleem, Wilkins, and Hutchinson on the line, and if Matthew Betts works out, good night. It's over. The 2 top tier free agents in this draft or in this season are cornerback and defensive tackle, I believe, for the Lions. Defensive end, we know that there's options in the second tier that would be just fine. But I think the Lions really need to add a defensive tackle to help Aiden Hutchinson, and I don't believe Broderick Martin is there yet. My top tier free agents, yeah, I hope the price is right too there, Robert. I'm sure I missed a ton of questions this morning, but that's what sucks when you do it alone. So I'm trying to get through a lot of all this information today. I apologize. So my top tier free agents and who makes sense to come back or let walk. So the Lions have over 20 unrestricted free agents, right? Graham Glasgow, number 1 on my list. He's got to come back. The Lions cannot afford to upset the offensive line. They really can't. Jonah Jackson, on the other hand, I'm not so confident in his services. James Houston. Look, he's a year removed from being a stud in this league. He came in week 10, 11, 12 or something like that of 2022. Completely banged it out. Rough season last season, being injured. Clearly didn't do anything in the NFC Championship game. did undergo a major body transformation while he was off. So it's showing that, he has the foresight to see that he needed to do something while being off. And I just don't know how it's translated to the field just yet. But he needs to come back. I can't imagine that it's going to be a very expensive deal. He hasn't done anything yet. Donovan Peoples-Jones, again, we need guys that Jared Goff can build with and around. At a minimum, you have to bring DPJ back to be a camp guy and let him earn a spot on the team. Going through a full offseason in training camp with Jared Goff will prove to help DPJ work his way up the roster. If Josh Reynolds doesn't come back, I believe DPJ is your second biggest target in the wide receiver room to stay with this team. Gardner Johnson, I'm on the fence. I do not believe that he's going to come back very cheap. Again, if somebody like Whitehead is available, that's another great option that's going to cost you about the same as a CJ Gardner Johnson. So I'm on the fence with Gardner. I've got to see, what kind of money is he looking for? And then Jalen Reeves-Maybin. Look, I mean, dude's a special teams ace. He was actually playing pretty well towards the end of the season. So I'd love to see him come back. I can't imagine that it's going to be a very expensive deal, but he's definitely earned a little bit of a raise. Khalil Dorsey was a nice surprise last season. I think that he has too much versatility not to land back on this team. And then lastly, like I said, Josh Reynolds. He's got to be somebody you try to take care of. We'll leave it at that. How badly do you guys want a first round pick? We've spoken about this a little bit, and here's where I'm at. And I'm going to wrap it up today with this topic. Like I've already said, this draft is kind of shaping up. It's weird to me. It's different than what everybody anticipated. I think a lot of people were thinking it was going to be deep with tackles, defensive line, defensive end. It's not. Linebackers, very thin. Wide receivers, I think it's a lot deeper. I think that there's plenty of wide receivers in this draft if you're looking to add some talent to your wide receiver room. Cornerbacks, slim to none, top tier. Quite a few second tier. So if you're looking to just get better and add depth, there's going to be plenty of quarterbacks in the second and third round. But there's just not big top tier talent. Now, that does not mean that someone's going to be drafted in the fourth round and they end up being a top tier talent here in a couple of seasons. That very well could happen. You kind of have those Cinderella stories. Every season there's somebody that flies under the radar that gets taken by a team that ends up just being a complete dog. And I'm hoping that Brad Holmes finds one. But when we look at the draft again, there is an interesting change to the quality that I feel many analysts thought there would be in later rounds. And there just really isn't that top tier quality for the needs that the Lions have. And I understand that, Brad Holmes drafts BPA, best player available. And that's where it's going to be an interesting draft. So I do believe if you really want a first round pick because the draft is at home, well, you could be waiting 3 hours for nothing because we may very well move back, knowing that there's plenty of offensive line in the second and third round. There's, second tier corners in the second and third round, and there's plenty of top tier wide receivers available in the second round. And what I mean by top tier is they're kind of borderline. Like I see Brendan Rice becoming, a very solid wide receiver on a team that needs a number two. And then he's going to have incredible production. I see it happening, but he's not a top tier Marvin Harrison Jr. right now. So we'll see what happens, in these later rounds. But I do believe that there's a big opportunity for Brad Holmes to move back. And I know that's a little bit different than what I said earlier, because I do believe if he wants to get that top tier guy, he's going to have to move up into the top 15. So those are your two choices, right? Move back or move forward. But this is a big leap forward for Brad Holmes. Could he move all the way up to number 4 with Arizona? That I'm going to talk about on Thursday. And I believe that's where I'm going to leave you hanging today. So you can park Arizona in your cap for Thursday, because we're going to talk about why it makes sense and what's going to happen if the Lions do move up to number 4, and who are they going to grab. So that's all for today's show. Please do yourself a favor and check out sportspider.com. That is sportspyder.com. If you guys want all of your news, all of your sports news in one place, including videos, podcasts, articles, sportspider.com does an excellent job at putting everything together. All the teams, all of the different franchises around the world, they're all right there, and you can customize it. It's free to sign up. sportspider.com. All right, everybody, I hope you're having a good Tuesday morning. Let's make it a great one, finish out the day, and we'll be back on Thursday at 8:30 in the morning. Derek should be back. Again, I hope he's doing well. But we're going to find out what happens when the Lions move up to number 4 on Thursday. All right, y'all. Take care. Go One Pride. Go Detroit Lions. Until next time, have a great day. Bye-bye.